Welcome to Creatives in Quarantine. I'm Tiwana Floyd, your host. This week, I speak to Master Coach Kristine Oller. You met my New York coach. Now you'll meet my Los Angeles coach. I've been working with Kristine since 2009, and I'm still working with her in a different capacity on my new business. Kristine started as an actor to organizing closets to organizing minds. Here's Kristine.
Yeah, I basically have had 3 careers. So
Yeah.
I was an actor for about a decade. I was a professional organizer for about 17 years. These all overlapped. And then I've been a coach now for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think most people nowadays just know me as a coach, whether they call it a life coach or career coach.
Right. Performance coach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm just a big sister who was like, will you pay me to boss them around? And then I discovered the answer was yes. And I never looked back.
I feel like that's good for Pisces because all the Pisces I know are really good at telling people what to do.
Really?
You get labeled as bossy. I don't think it's bossy. I think it's take charge. I think it's you can, I think Pisces can see that things are not operating really great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go ahead and help you guys out. Because it'll help us all. It'll help me out.
A lot of my dear friends are Pisces. I know like of my circle, March, like so many birthdays.
Wow.
My husband's a Pisces. Like it's.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Deep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My best friend is a Pisces. We grew up together. So it's nice to have her, like we take turns taking charge and we both know it's not even a choice. It just happens. And it's a nice little simpatico relationship that we've had over the years and still do.
Yes. It's so nice to be parts of things where I'm not in charge and I'm not coordinating. Exactly. I love being a guest.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Or just a student, a participant.
A participant. Yeah.
I love it.
That reminds me of a time, me and one of my good friends, she's a Gemini like me, and we had gone out for the first time. Like we were always operating in a group, but this is the first time we went out together to go see a show. And I drove, I parked, and then when we came out, we didn't know where I parked. It was because it was her night off. And I was so used to somebody taking charge, and we were like, oh my gosh. And it was so funny that we did not know where our part. We found it eventually, but then now we know. It's like, okay, are you paying attention or am I paying attention?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, when I didn't really even know my hometown, which is LA, Glendale. And then I went away to college, came back and had to like relearn the town because I didn't drive. I wasn't paying attention to where anything was. Whereas, if I'm not focused on it, I'm not focused on it at all. Yeah. I'm unreliable.
Same here. So how did you transition from actor to organizer to then coach?
It was very organic and unplanned. And it was very, it was very difficult, the acting to organizing, because ever since I was little, like I came out of the womb going, I'm an actor. I very early on identified that I could do that. I knew what that was and I could do it. And I loved getting laughs and I was funny. But my parents, I could have grown up in Idaho. My parents are the only 2 people in Los Angeles who not connected with the industry.
Wow.
So they're just like, go to college. We're not going to do anything with you when you're little, just go to college. Yeah. Okay. And so all my friends knew that my aspirations were acting. I went to college and got a theater degree. I came back to Los Angeles and started pursuing the thing. And in my mid-20s, I discovered this thing called professional organizing. And this was before Google. So I just read an article about this one guy who did it. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I can totally do that. Because I had been organizing my sister's room, my little sister's room, forever. She hated it. But I'd be like, let's organize your bedroom, because she was rather messy. And so that was my idea of a fun Saturday. So to learn that was something someone would pay you for, I was like, oh, okay. And I just thought it was always going to be just this thing I did on the side to earn money to support my acting. But I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with business. Because back when at that time when we were acting, there was no YouTube, there was no, you had your pager and you waited to be invited to the party.
Right.
And film equipment was really expensive. So making your own projects, there's a barrier to entry on that.
Mm-hmm.
So you just kind of waited around as an artist and did theater,
Mm-hmm.
little theaters in Los Angeles. And so I always wonder like how it would have been different, what my trajectory would have been, how much longer I would have stayed in the game if I could have created my own stuff the way you could do now.
Right.
But as it was, I really recognized that organizing and business, it was like, ooh, I could get up in the morning and run as fast as I can with this. Like nobody needs to invite me to the party. I'm throwing the party for myself. But it was very much oh my God, what are people going to think? Because, you know, everyone thinks the glamorous jobs are the ones you should aspire to. And if you're doing that and you leave that, especially for something as mundane as organizing people's houses and stuff, it's like, oh, so you failed.
Right.
Oh, so you quit.
Right.
Oh, so you couldn't hack it anymore.
Right.
So I was very much like, how am I going to like admit this to people?
Right.
And then I was like, well, will it even work? Because I was pretty thriving commercially as an actor, especially, and my organizing business, but they were holding each other back because I couldn't give either one my full attention. So I had this idea. I'm like, well, I see all these women, you know, having babies and they go on hiatus. So why don't I just ask my agents to go on hiatus without having the kid? So I was like, I'm going to take an 8-month break, but I'll be back. I'm just going to go do this for a while. And they were very supportive. Come back. Yes, we love you. To see if I'd miss it, because I didn't know. I'd been thinking of it, obsessing over it, steeped in it my entire life. And this would be the first time in my life where I wouldn't be doing it. And I didn't miss it at all. I just didn't miss it at all. And I never went back. But I think it takes that leap of faith sometimes to know. How are you going to know unless you experiment and try? And I didn't just quit it cold turkey. I just said, I'll be back in 8 months, you know, so I left the door open, but I didn't know. I mean, maybe I was going to turn on the TV and feel like, oh man, that should have been me. I never felt that. And, you know, giving up the pursuit of the work is, everyone wants to give up the pursuit of the work. That was to be able to tell somebody I'll be there at 4 and to know that I would be there at 4 was a life-changing experience. Yeah.
And this predates the whole, what's now is very in vogue and popular is the Marie Kondo generation.
Yeah.
Organizing was not a very prevalent, recognizable thing to do. It wasn't popular, but it always existed.
Yeah, it existed for quite some time. Like the founding, you know, people found it back in 1984, I think, the National Association. But I remember going to jury duty and they would ask you your occupation. And I said professional organizer. And the judge was like, oh, like unions? And I didn't know what he was talking about. But then I was like, oh, like strikes. And like, no, pencils. I remember I said, no, like pencils, like boxes, like stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I started a business where I not only had to like start the business, but also had to educate people of what the business was. Like, oh, you know what? This can be done and I can do that for you. People had no idea it was a thing.
Yeah.
But it's very creative and it filled me in the same ways acting did. You had to get inside someone's mind. You had to figure out what motivated them, what would work best for them. And you got to have this positive impact on them and leave them feeling a completely different way when you left, which is always the joy, you know, of doing art where people see your performance and then leave feeling different, you know. So it completely filled me up. And because now YouTube and technology, I was then able to do all that kind of stuff performance wise now as an organizer. So I just felt very completely filled. And then clients started asking me as we were doing work, they would start asking me questions about organizing their mind, strategy, like, oh, what do you think of it? And I was like, oh, okay. I think I could certainly see there was a gap for performers.
Yeah.
A lot of performers wanted managers, but not all managers are strategists.
Right.
They wanted someone to tell them what to do strategically with their career, but not all managers can do that actually.
Yeah.
So I was like, I could do that. I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's sort of the origin story. And all of my weird creative stuff has found outlets through all of this. Because it sounds very mundane, like you're an organizer, you're a coach, you just kind of talk, but it's like all the marketing stuff and all of the teaching and coaching I find very creative and very stimulating. And then I do things like, paint.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought up the part about taking the 8 months off and talking to your agent. I feel that with a lot of times with anybody who has to deal with someone that they have to answer to in a way, whether it's an agent, manager, or some other entity, there's a terror around taking that time away. And for those of us who recognize that this is still our career and our lives to choose what we want, then we go and say, hey, I need some time off, whether it's to have a baby, whether it's to create another business, or just get your mind together, or sometimes your finances, because usually with actors, it could be a struggle financially. So when you had to have that conversation, was there any anxiety around it, or?
Well, I don't remember there being anxiety around having I had really lovely people that I was working with.
Yeah.
And I was at that point in time, I think like 29, 30 maybe. So I wasn't the 24-year-old,
Right. Yeah. More, yes.
Yeah, wasn't my first agents. But I think the important thing is that I wasn't asking them.
Right. Yeah.
I was informing them.
Right. This is what I'm going to do.
The ask was, and I didn't even ask this, but the ask was, will the door still be open? Like, can I come back is the only ask, but I had already decided that I needed to do this experiment for my life. And if they had dropped me, okay.
Yeah.
I had already fired agents before.
Right.
I just knew it wasn't the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said it before I even needed to ask of like, oh yeah, come back. Door's always open. Yeah. So, but those moments in your life as an artist, especially, but really as a person, those are the moments where you move yourself towards your full potential. Those are the little moments when you take a step of expansion where you're like, I'm going to do this. I have to do this. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. I'm an adult, and it doesn't matter what anyone else would say, nor do I need permission because I've given myself permission. And I am willing to accept whatever consequences come from doing this. Like, if they would drop me, I would have been fine, fine with it, because I was willing to accept the consequences that came with moving my ship in this direction. Mm-hmm. And those are the moments when it comes together like that, where you expand a little bit. Because you can win an Oscar and not expand, by the way. You can win an award and get a promotion and not expand. Mm-hmm. It's the moments when you ask for a raise that you expand into your full potential. And my whole drive, just the way I'm wired as a person, is fundamentally there is nothing more important to me. And I mean, there is nothing more important to me than me expanding into my fullest potential while I'm here on earth. Mm-hmm. No relationship, no nothing. Right. That is it for me. That's why I'm here. Mm-hmm. So I've always, from a very young age, been willing to bet on myself
Mm-hmm.
and willing to take a leap before I knew I wouldn't fall flat on my face.
Right.
Sometimes I've fallen flat on my face.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that just proves that you don't die from that. And that's a good lesson to learn. Oh, I didn't die. The earth didn't open up and swallow me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, because what we, for those of us who, for I won't say those of us, because I don't live in this idea of this fear of being of let go, or the idea of I have to behave a certain way to get these people to like me, meaning representation or casting directors or whatever. But for those who may have other desires, it's good to hear that there's people who are self-made, because you are completely self-made at this point. And I think that's probably why it felt so good for you not to return, because then you are now completely controlling what you want for your life, as well as elevating as yourself and others.
Yeah, once I had a taste of that freedom, I was like, this is amazing. After the contrast to just knowing the skill set I had as an artist and not being able to use it.
Mm-hmm.
That was so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But I must say, Tiwana, I'm really happy you're doing this series, because you're someone that I've stolen bravery from over the, like, ooh, I just love, I've seen so many times when you've just decided to go your own way or stop something because it wasn't right. And I'm just like, that's so brave. And just the way that you are able, this is the place where I most like watch you and listen to you and go, I need more of that. I need more of that. Even now, where you're just sort of like, no, I'm not having that. I'm not doing that. I'm not having that conversation. I'm not going to be involved with that. I'm just going to say no. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
Right.
You can do that?
It's kind of like, you know how when like anything that's happening now, or let me see, who's the most recent person who did this? I think it's Jeff Bezos. Well, it happened a while ago, but when there was some infidelity with his wife, and the rags try to hold it against him, and he holds a full press conference and is like, this is what happened. So now you have nothing to talk about. It's that type of ownership. It's like, I can't let somebody drive my life and make me feel like I have no choice. So then it's just like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say the thing or do the thing or be done with it, so that I can still have my own freedom. Yeah. And I think that's really what drives me the most. As right now I'm listening, I just actually finished Lucille Ball's autobiography.
Oh.
And she talks about that moment, because back in those days, the actors they were under the studio and they did whatever the studio did. And there's this moment where she talks about how if she was with RKO, but they wouldn't make her a starlet. They kept her in this little area of this niche comedy sidekick chick. And she had this manager who she just felt like wasn't standing up for her. And she was on a set, and her and Desi were arguing and on the brink of one of their many separations. And she was forgetting her lines on set, and she didn't know what it was. And so she went to her manager and asked him to do something. And he's like, well, from what I hear, there's something wrong with you. So what's going on? And she didn't feel supported in that. And so that was when she decided, I'm just going to leave him. And it was such a big thing to do at that time, because artists did not leave the studios. They didn't leave their managers. And that manager had gotten her to RKO. So once she left, she just decided, I'm probably not going to work for a while. I'll be blacklisted for a while. And what happened, because she was already talented in her own right, and this is predating I Love Lucy, but already talented and had this reputation, another producer reached out to her and said, hey kid, you can go, I'll put in a call to MGM, or I think, who was the other one? There was another one Paramount. Which one do you want? And so that was her first taste of, I don't have to stand for this. And then from there, you start to see her start to make decisions based on that. So, it was good to hear, because the more that I make the decisions based on what it is, making sure my needs are met, the more stronger I get. It's almost like a cartoon character. I just like Popeye and his spinach. I get stronger by making those decisions and seeing, sometimes I, get bruised on the way down or trip and fall or whatever, but still landing on her feet. And so that's just where I live now.
Yeah. And don't, you don't get there unless you try, unless you take the risk of the first couple times of being like, oh, okay, I can do this. Yeah.
And but you also too have, you take credit or attribute it to that as well, because you also teach that. So here it is, you made that decision for yourself years ago, going from actor to organizer, then to coach, but you've been making those decisions and still make those decisions that empower your bottom, not even just bottom line, but empower your whole system, your whole business. So when we get coaching from you in our masterminds, and you start letting us know and giving us a different way of thinking, that also has been incorporated in helping me over the years since 2009, and learning that I don't have to just be subservient or be a victim or waiting for it to happen. There's other ways to take ownership and respectfully, and still be seen as an equal, if you will. So that's also something that I've learned from you in all these years.
Oh, I'm glad. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you know, did you become a coach through the Actors Network, and maybe Kevin West, the owner, was he looking, did he hand pick people? Did you volunteer?
Yeah, no, I don't even remember how long I'd been a member, but I don't think it was very long. And so he and his co-founder, Paulo Andres, were running it, and they had these power groups, and I think there were like 7 of them, and they were doing them all. And then they got to a point where like, we got to train people. So they invited 3 of us, 3 members, and I was one of them. And it was one of those moments in life where, and I've had a few of these, where someone else sees something in you that you don't see. Because I was like, why did they pick me? I was just a member. I was just a member of a power group. I wasn't doing anything extraordinary as far as like, I am a leader. But Kevin saw something in me and invited me to do this. And it was one of those moments where my whole body was like, yes, you have to do this, unquestionably. But I mean, that wasn't at all on my personal radar. So Kevin's intense, and we trained for a year because he's
also
serious. He's serious about, quality and creating a really good environment.
Yeah.
And so for a year, and we did it in like 3 sections. First, we just watched. Then we would just lead the first part of the group, which was kind of just administrative. And then in the last 4 months, we would actually be leading our groups with someone sitting in. So that was lovely. It was a good, like, easing us into the waters. And then we got our own groups. And I mean, I was destined to do that. Leading groups. I am indebted to him for this opportunity. It really was the life-changing opportunity, because it gave me this forum in which to practice and learn. Like, that's where I learned how to listen to what people are really saying. And we weren't brought in, we were called facilitators because we were just there to keep the group going in the way the group was supposed to function. That was the thing. We weren't there to know everything, which was lovely, because then you didn't have to feel like you had to know anything. He's like, Kevin was like, if you don't know something, just send them to me.
Right.
So that's your job. So great. So not pressure. But then I realized, like, oh, after I'm very naturally wired to see patterns. And so I could start to see patterns in the questions that questions the actors were answering, and where the pitfalls and gaps in knowledge was. And so then I would start to fill in those gaps and pitfalls based on, what I'd learned from the people. And I did that for free. We weren't paid, but I did that for 11 years. So, and I had multiple groups. At one time I had 3 a month. And I ended up having 2, and they were the only groups that had waiting lists.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But the power of a group helping one another, which was the ethos of the Actors Network, and the ability to watch people grow. I loved it so much because people were in my groups for years.
Yeah, right.
And just watching the arc of their development was amazing. And it was really sad when I realized, at first I'm a very moderate person. I don't do hard breaks. So I went from 2 groups to 1 group. And then I was like, I really do have to stop this, because I wasn't even an actor at that point.
Right. Yeah.
I was just a really good coach, and I would do it. And they were good marketing for my organizing. That's how I got a lot of organizing clients and eventually coaching clients. But eventually it was like, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to miss this so much, because I left not on my radar at all that I should open my own group and charge for it. That wasn't my idea. Again, another person who comes into my life. Well, Dawn was already in my life, but who comes in with she could see something that I couldn't see was possible for me.
Yeah.
And I was flabbergasted when she suggested, no, we need to keep going. Like, let's handpick some people, and how much do you need to make? And I was just, what? And had she never done that, I'm not sure I would ever have charged. And then I wouldn't have had the next 10 years of all my iterations of groups.
Right.
So, I'm self-made, but I have, as every self-made person, I've had a lot of privilege and luck and blessings and help from other people. Mm-hmm. So it's been, but most of the milestones of my work life were not planned out by me, and most of the big ones weren't even thought of by me.
Right. Because
even coaching wasn't my idea. I was doing power groups, but I didn't think that would turn into anything. I was just having fun. Like, I knew I was good at it, but I was just enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And then one of my organizing clients was someone who said, I gave him some ideas of how to shift his whole business. And he's like, well, how do I pay you for that? Let's do that together. And I was like, what? You're going to pay me for my ideas? Like, that again wasn't my idea. Mm-hmm. And it worked with him very, very well. So he started talking about me. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of I never hang out my shingle right away. Mm-hmm. I always do underground, like working with people without, really declaring it. And then when I'm like, I got this, it doesn't take me long. It's like a few people. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Right.
And then the shingle goes out.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that transition I didn't even foresee. And thank God for him.
Right.
Who was willing to go, I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
And this was a veteran voiceover. I mean, a master voiceover artist. Like we knew each other because I took his class in audiobook. Like, it was amazing. It was amazing.
And that's the better route to go, to be word of mouth by someone who's highly revered, and that person probably has a vast community. And then it's like, there's people like you, for instance. Pretty much everybody that I'm talking to on these talks are people who, if they recommend somebody, I know I can look into it and probably just already sign up without question, because these are people who have already looked into it, made a decision, see it as valid, and probably learned from something, or maybe return on investment has tripled or whatever. But it's just easier when it's word of mouth that way.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate that it continued to grow to a level that could just sustain me through a lot of word of mouth. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's like they all pretty much fell hand in hand with each other in terms of, like, even though you pretty much volunteered your time at the Actors Network because it was so fulfilling. Like you said, just being in the class, it was rewarding for me to come every month to see people get over a hump, or see people move through success, or see somebody who was talking about this one thing for so long, and then finally get unstuck. And it's just like, oh my goodness, that's been pretty much at every iteration of each mastermind you've held, from Power Group to AMG to IAM to now BNR. It's very rewarding, and I can see how the creativity lends itself to that. But now you have, well, now that you're branching off, well, I don't know if you're branching off. So now that you're leaving, I guess we're folding that, closing the box on that one, going into the next chapter of your life. Do you already know what's next, or is that unfolding as we speak?
It's kind of unfolding. I know a little bit. Oh, I just want to say one other thing is, when I was acting, I loved improv. Love it. Like, I just have the brain for it, and I love it. And that is literally what I feel like I'm doing in coaching and mastermind groups, but especially in a group, because you show up and you're like, I have no idea what they're going to ask me.
Right.
I hope something comes out of my mouth that will be helpful, but it feels so the same way the improv did, and the same kind of flow when you get into a groove of like, wow, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. You just feel like you're the little channel for a nugget of funny, or a nugget of wisdom, and it's outside of yourself, but it's so stimulating, because you just feel like that flying by the seat of your pants,
right,
sort of thing. So that, because so much of the texture of how I was as a performer has woven itself into what I've been able to do outside of traditional performing. It's just, I'm still feeling like I'm using all my tools and all of my past experience and education, of like, why did I study improv? Well, I'm not afraid to fly by the seat of my pants. I can sprinkle in humor and keep this lively and keep the energy up. Like, all those technical things you realize have so many other applications in life. So many. Anybody who really, really is taking the career of an artist, in really any way, professionally and seriously, you learn so much about yourself, so much empathy for other people, and so many skills that can translate in so many ways. Parents are like, oh, my kid wants to be an artist. I'm like, if they are serious about it and really study it for several years, they'll be far better off than if they just study accounting.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. And the thing about improv, I always say improv should be a life course. It should be in every level of schooling, because there's something to yes and that opens you up to anything being possible, even if you fail. And then it's okay when you do, and then you find your way out of it or not, and then you move on to the next topic or suggestion or whatever.
Yeah. And even when, I've done things where it was like, I've never done that before. I don't have any experience, but it was a very yes and, like, I'll figure it out.
Right.
And how do you get the confidence of you'll figure it out? Well, you figured out a lot of other things in improv, or just in other things in life. Like, you just realize you have the capability of likely figuring it out. So such a strong thing. I 100% agree that improv should be piece of the curriculum.
Yes. And it makes everything better. It makes coaching better. It makes acting better. It makes music better. It makes relationships better.
Well, I think because it's really about tuning into your unconscious and your connection with, however you want to call source or God or what, but it's like a connection to something that's not just your brain, and feeling what that feels like allows you to then recognize it and do that in other areas of your life as well, and trust your gut on that. But just I mean, improv, I think, is a lot of people's first visceral understanding of, oh, there is something beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just have those moments of like genius and you're like, where did that come from?
Right.
So it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And worth all the pain where you bomb.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah.
Get used to it. And you just say, okay, well, is there anything to learn from that? Or do I want to deal with it right now? Either way, we just get back up. I think that's it. It's just, it's a resilience. It causes you to persevere and be resilient and just keep trying.
Oh yeah. You've got to fail. You gotta.
That's where you learn.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked you a question, but before I go there, I'm actually going to come back to, so here we are in quarantine. And how are you handling quarantine? Is there any creativity opening up for you? Are you just relaxing and taking the time off?
I already knew this was going to be a weird year for me.
Mm-hmm.
So a weird year in that there were things going on in my life that could take me, off course or preoccupy my attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know when that was going to happen. And I didn't know for how long or what emotional state that would leave me in.
Mm-hmm.
So I already knew that was kind of probably going to happen this year. So when the pandemic hit, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, this is just what I was doing anyway. Like this was already like this year's up in the air for me. So I was mentally prepared for that state of being.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, oh, now we're all doing it. And then, so because I knew it was going to be kind of weird, I'd already been like, well, I'll do this year with work. I'll do this and I'll do this, but I'll see, because I don't know. Maybe I won't be able to work. I don't know. So for me, work didn't change at all. Clients wanted to talk to me. Everything that I was already planning on doing, I just started doing. So the work was very seamless. Thank goodness my husband still has a job.
Yeah.
Because his job is connected to production in the industry. So we were all like, Fortunately, he still has that. So that's been very even keeled. And we have an environment where luckily we each have our own workspaces.
Yeah.
So my workspace wasn't disrupted.
Yeah.
And I never got the downtime that some people had. I mean, it was just business as usual.
Yeah.
Business as usual work-wise. But for all of us, it has not been business as usual emotional-wise. So dealing with, with the revolutionary the civil revolution, that's what I hope it is. That's why I'm calling it that, to bring that in, that, and then the impact of absorbing the realization of who I am in the history of America and having to reframe and start to take on for myself the attention towards my behavior and actions and words and dealings that a lot of Black people and people of color have always had to have. And now I had to have that, as we all should, to take part of that burden. But that's a lot of energy that you have to pull from other things to be able to devote to shifting yourself in that way. So that was something that came into my life that I wasn't expecting to have to attend to, but carving out time for that. And the emotional, of my friends, of what they're going through, and just and then holding space. I'm very fortunate and proud to have a multicultural groups. My groups have always been fairly multicultural. To be able to provide and hold the space for those groups to continue. I'm so happy people showed up. I was just like, oh, are people gonna wanna be in this space? And then when they were, it was just such an affirmation of like, okay, we've been doing something good all along for it to be able to continue in this time. So I'm like, okay. So those adjustments, of course. So the most, I was thinking about this before the call. During quarantine, my period of most creativity has actually been with me, my own little experiments that I'm doing on myself. And I've always done experiments on myself. But what I mean by that is because people are oriented towards time in three ways: future thinking, present thinking, and past. You have an orientation toward the past, present, or future. And I'm a very future oriented person, for better, for worse. They all have upsides and downsides, but I like thinking about the future and planning for the future and projecting into the future. And it's just my happy place. It's great. Future serves me well in business. You can't do it right now. You just can't. You can, but it's for nothing. Yeah. It's like escapism now, trying to plan and project. And so I realized that if I continue to use that as a crutch, to use it as my form of escape, I'm going to miss out of a growth opportunity of what it would be like to be supremely present, meaning taking one day at an actual time. Because I've never been addicted to a substance. So I've never been in a recovery program where you really have to like really take it one day at a time. I've never had to do any kind of recuperation from an illness where you're taking it one day at a time. So that is not a normal practice for me. And so I've enrolled myself in presence school, and I've started a little notebook. And I have been committed. I am on day, I think it's 13 out of 63 days that I'm doing. And it is about being supremely in the moment of each day, which is not easy for me. But it's creative. It makes you notice things that you would miss, that I would miss, always on to the next thing. It allows you to enjoy some things or be present in the discomfort in a way that I prefer to skip over. Let's go on to the next thing. And that's, good or bad. I don't sit in the joy enough, and I don't even sit in the discomfort enough. Yeah. So it has been really illuminating, and I'm really enjoying it and very, very committed to seeing this experiment through in the container. And there's other little bits to it in this container that I'm doing, but I'm finding it very creative. And there's a lot of, when you can't plan, what that immediately forces you to do is surrender. I still have plans. I still plan my week. I still do things, but it's surrendering to the result, because who knows what the next months bring. I mean, it was like 130 in Death Valley, the highest it's ever been registered on Earth or something. I was like, my mind exploded yesterday. I'm like, we're all going to die, like sooner than we think we are. It just, every day your mind has so much to explode around. That orienting yourself into the present is a challenge, but I'm finding it to be, this is by far the most, I finally had a breath, I think, when August started. And this is what I've chosen as my creativity project. Me.
Yeah, well, first of all, surrender. Yeah, that's not an easy feat. And there's still probably some people who are having a hard time doing that, because it's a practice and it's not easy to do. And I call myself a recovering control addict. I'm way better now because I've been
Me too.
practicing for 13 years.
Yep.
Release. But I can imagine during those days when I needed to have everything in order and know what was happening, how this would be maddening. So to live in that, for me, takes all the pressure off of trying to make something happen or trying to understand why something isn't happening when it should be happening. The surrender allows me to just give it all away and just trust and see what happens. And like you said, every day that we wake up, it's like, okay, I don't know what's on the menu today, but we're going to find out. And we're still here.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are, that's even interesting to watch. I see mostly baby boomers. I see, this person died. And the first thing I go to is the age, and it's 70 to 80. And it's just like, whew, tough.
Yeah.
But in all of it, surrender and trust. That's all we can do right now.
Mm-hmm.
With your daily, you said 13th day you're on right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whew, it's good. Because I can be in meditation and thinking that I'm in meditation. Next thing I know, I'm thinking, I'm like, when did I start thinking? When did that happen?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
When did that happen? When did I stop being present and went over there to these ideas? So within your 13 days, has there been anything that has been truly inspirational in the moment of you catching it?
I think the most was the most electrifying moment was actually the moment that I came up with this idea to do this experiment. Because how it unfolded was, okay, so I'm 49, my birthday's in March, so I'll be 50 in March. And I take each decade and I have a goal of the person I want to be at 50. Not what I want to accomplish, not, it's just like, what's the texture of that person? And there's one more thing on the kind of little list for that person who I want to be at 50. And that was physical vitality. Not losing weight, not just, I wanted to feel physically vibrant. I had all the other boxes checked, but that was the last thing. And my physical vitality has been, I've been blessed with good health. Oh gosh, so blessed. But physical vitality, because I live so much in my head, disconnected from my body, like, what's that? That just holds my head up. I'm not inclined nor very talented around anything athletic. So I was never really drawn to that. So, I've just done the minimum to function. And it's always been on my list, and it's always been a struggle. Like if you go back to my journals from the 20s, it's like, you gotta get fit. So finally here I am. I'm like, you have about a half a year left. You need to start. So then I started thinking, well, what is it that has prevented me my whole life from really, I would do it in fits and starts. Mm-hmm. And what it really boils down to is when the moment comes that this is my time to exercise or something, it doesn't feel compelling. And I was also like the last person picked for every PE team. So that early childhood humiliation of being, okay, well, I guess you get Kristine. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in my life. So it's like a little bruise. So every time it's like, okay, well, it's time to your 20-minute workout. It's like, can I just do anything else than push something that pushes that bruise? Yeah. So I didn't want to be present with those feelings. So my little future brain is like, yeah, but you know what? You really have to write that thing, because if you write that thing, then you can do that thing, and then and that will pay off. Even though, of course, health is the thing that pays off in the future the most, but blah, blah, blah. I'm 40. I don't need to do that. So I realized, oh my God, this isn't actually about getting your vitality in order. This is about you getting yourself to be present enough to exercise every day as almost a devotional to presence, not a devotional to fitness.
Right.
Okay, so that I was walking at my favorite place, and I just like stood there for a second. I was like, whoa, okay. All right. And then I'm like, okay, so this is really an exercise in presence.
Right. I
and
like that.
Then it went one layer deeper, and this brought me to tears. I walked a little further, and it was like, okay, so presence. What will it take to be present and deal with those feelings and do the exercise? Well, a big excuse that I would always have is because I love what I love what I do, but I'm also very inclined to work, because that's also where all my artistic creativity is funneled. So it's just a very big, compelling thing that I love in my life. But and the story I was telling myself, of course, is if I take time to exercise, I'm taking time and thus money away from myself. And so I was like, oh, but in order for me to be present and to use my time to do this activity, I'm going to have to surrender to letting it all work itself out, even though I'm over here doing push-ups and not answering email. And that was when I started to cry, because I realized this is really, really about surrender. It's not about physical vitality. I think I was given the story I tell myself. I talk to the universe a lot. I was given the notion of, you need to work on this physical vitality thing, I think, for them to get me to surrender.
Yes. They had to package it in this nice.
Yes.
It sounded great. Oh, I like the way that sounds.
And I couldn't come to this understanding of the connection between these three things, that each of which has eluded me: physical vitality, being present, and surrendering. If you want to know my top three things I've been chasing my whole life, those would be it. And I couldn't connect those dots until I was here at 49 and a half. But because I had had that strong notion of that 50, I want to feel a certain way. If that hadn't, that was a goal I set at 40. So if I hadn't carried that for 9.5 years through the decade of my 40s, I wouldn't have, that's how long it took. And then it got me to this place of like, oh, and this is the gift I'm giving to myself for my 50th birthday, is like this class in surrender.
Yeah.
Hoping the money comes and the rent gets paid.
And it always does. Yeah.
It does. Tiwana, it does. I've just seen it too many times. It's just scary.
Yeah.
When you're
yeah.
going to apply it to you.
Right.
And I've seen you do it.
Yeah.
To you. I've seen you come to group and go, well, I quit that thing.
Got $25 in the bank. I don't know what's next. Right.
Right. And then you're like, I booked this thing. And I've seen it with so many people that I do have the trust. I just have a very, control freaky nature. Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because when I first met with my life coach, I was 29 going into my 30s. And I've seen her every single year on my birthday, every single year. Yeah. The very first conversation we ever had was, she's like, you need to take your hands off the steering wheel of your life. Surrender. She said that word at the very first meeting. And now 29:49. Things take time.
Yeah, it does. Right.
Sometimes you can change in an instant, and sometimes things have to just marinate and grow. That seed is growing under the soil, and then it finally sprouts through.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm pursuing creatively, really. Recreating myself is what I'm trying to do during this. Not in a way like I'm going to come out of this, at my fittest or living my best life. That's not it. It's just I'm taking this time while I have it during these circumstances to recreate and reshape a part of my internal wiring. Yeah.
That's a great gift. It's not easy. So however long it takes to get there, to be here now. Yeah, surrender. Whew. Presence, trust, evolving.
Yeah. But I see it, the goals I have for my 50s, I've always those are the most important, because even if I was like, no, I've got to work and I've got to earn money and I've got to do this. I mean, I'm working, I'm earning money, but even if I put all of my effort towards there and let's say I earn so much money, I would feel so horrible on my 50th birthday.
Yeah.
This is it. If I do not do this, I know the feeling I'm going to have. And it's a feeling of a missed opportunity, because once you have the awareness of oh, you have the time, you can do this. And this is the bigness that this is about, really, not fitness. And you go, no, you consciously say no to that. That will eat away at your soul. I know it will. I mean, mine, it will eat away at my soul.
Yeah.
So I can't do that. That goes against my whole ethos of expanding into my fullest potential. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And this is a great time, which we could claim it as a midway point, because we could easily live to 100, to then set up what is going to be the next 50 years right now by doing that. Imagining what life will be if you've operated in a different way for the first 50, and now you give up this major component of presence and surrender for the next 50. I can't wait to see what that looks like.
Yeah, me too. And I really think that, as ever the planner, the thing we have in our sphere of influence right now, not everyone, but a lot of people, we don't know where any of us is going to be in March of next year. No. We have no idea, but we do have influence over who we're going to be.
Yes.
In March. And I have decided who I'm going to be.
Right.
No matter what unfolds.
Right.
So.
And so with that, is that part of the project to come? Is that the new project that you're working on? Because you said you have a semblance of what something looks like right now, but.
Yeah, as far as business wise, well, I have Creating Cashflow.
Yes.
Which is a course, but it also has a community and a group, and I coach that group 3 times a month. So that is a new mastermind group that's forming. I hope it will be a large group of people. I'm building it and designing it to have a container where it serves a lot of people. So that'll be different and yet similar. And then I have another idea that's just sort of swimming right now in my head of maybe, and I don't know yet. It's just sort of a little new tadpole of an idea that has swum, and I was like, what? Oh, I never thought about that.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the biggest blessings for me that I feel is that this time I'm experiencing the earth will be before this pandemic. And this is a new demarcation of time for civilization.
Right.
And I am very, very happy, blessed, thankful that I'm experiencing it at the age that I'm experiencing it with the toolkit that I have.
Yeah.
Oh, I know for, the younger folks, it's like, oh, so you'll be sharpening your tools during this time. You will be buying some tools and learning how to use them. And you will do that faster.
Yeah.
Because so that's the blessing you'll get is like, woo, you go and sharpen those tools very fast.
Yes.
And amass your toolkit so that in 5 years and 10 years, you're locked and loaded in a way that I wasn't at that age.
Yeah.
But, okay. I'm like, okay, I can deal with this now. With all the other stuff that's going in my life, I feel like I have the capacity to deal and not fall apart.
Right.
And actually thrive and actually come out of it a more aware, wiser, a bigger contributor as a person. So I'm like, lucky me. I wouldn't necessarily want to be older and I wouldn't necessarily want to be younger. But I also think that has just a lot to do with the work I've done on myself. It's like I can see, now it pays off in times like these. So I encourage people to do the work, but also had I not done the work, it doesn't matter if you're just age to age 49, that doesn't mean anything. No. Yeah. So, so I'm doing okay. And I'm able to access my creativity even under these circumstances. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Kristine.
Thank you.
This is a great chat. Of course, I will have your links in the description section once we get everything set up and people can learn more about you through your website.
Okay. This was such an honor. I was delighted to be amongst the creatives that you chose. I was so delighted to get the email on me. Yes, ma'am, I will do this.
Oh, yeah. It's a great group of people. It's just wonderfully insightful. And each time I speak to someone, my day gets lifted. So thank you for saying yes. And thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. And it's a gift you give to me because now I'm included in this group of people and I can reach out to any of those people and say, oh, hey, I was also one of those. So it enables
that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So that expands my sphere of connection with people. So thank you.
Until next time.
Okay.
Thank you for watching Creatives in Quarantine. I love this quote. Nothing more important than expanding into my fullest potential while here on Earth. Kristine, that was so rich. If you learned anything here today, please subscribe. There were some really good golden nuggets here. And hey, what are you planning for the next 50 years of your life? See you next time. Bye.